All right. So, last session of the day, you're still here. I just genuinely appreciate that and really value that. And so, really, this session is going to be designed to deliver as much value to you as possible. Again, definitely want to thank you for being here and for participating in our content. And I'd love to just get a quick pulse. Like, if this is the first event you participated in with Community Boost, throw that in the chat, say first timer or something like that. And then if you've attended our nonprofit marketing summits in the past, maybe you're a seasoned vet in those events as well. I'd love to hear about that as well. We're always trying to get a pulse of how those things go. So feel free to comment in the chat. Emily, first timer, great. Well, if you love this, you'll definitely love the summit as well. Feel free to keep it coming. Debbie, a first event, thank you for coming. And as you've heard many times, our mission is to empower social ventures changing the world. So that's why we do this type of content. We're proud of the hundreds of organizations we serve directly, but this is, again, plays into our bigger mission to share the learnings we're doing every single day with the greater nonprofit community so you guys can all accelerate and scale online revenue and impact. And so what I want to do in this last session is definitely do our best to make this as engaging as possible. I know it's been a long day. So first, I just want to talk through top ad day takeaways with some of the participants. I just can't help myself these last sessions of the day. We like to give out things for those that are still here because it means a lot that you are. So we'll talk more about that here in a second. From there, it's just going to be additional Q&A. I'm a big believer that Q&A can be some of the most valuable content for you. So everyone that spoke today, if you had a burning question, we're going to pull up the vast majority of the group on stage and have discussions around any outstanding questions you have. We'll really stick on for quite some time. As long as you got questions, we'll be here basically. And then from there, we'll just talk next steps. And if you're interested in working with Community Boost, we'll certainly, I know we've certainly hammered that home today, but if you have any other questions about that, we'll certainly discuss that as well. So just a quick poll before we dive into top takeaways. I'm curious, does your nonprofit work with a digital marketing agency? I don't know if we're running the poll, but let's see. Yeah, there we go. So you can click here, no, but we're planning to this year. Yes, we already are. We sadly don't have the budget. Or no, we like managing and executing on our own. Feel free to take some time, click that poll. We'll give people another more minute here. Yeah, interesting. I mean, it's pretty even. Really comes down to the people. Sounds like that have budget are and trying to engage, and then those that don't, often worry about budget or don't have it right now. And then awesome. I love seeing people be true practitioners and really owning, these channels on their own too. I see Christy in the chat. I really appreciate this. Our team did the last summit, and we're still talking about how much we loved it. Can't wait for the next one. That's awesome. I can't wait. August 16th to 18th. Be sure to register at nonprofitmarketingsummit.org. It is free. Maybe we can get that link in the chat if you people haven't registered for the summit. It's basically this on some serious steroids. It's 3 days, speakers from all over the sector. We truly love putting it on. All right, why don't we go ahead and end the poll here? From there, I want to just discuss top ad day takeaways. So, I'd love to, at minimum, have some engagement in the chat. How did you like ad day overall? This specific type of content with our team. We'd love your feedback. What were some of your biggest takeaways? What were some of your favorite sessions? What are your top action items? And if you're up for it, I'd love anyone to be just willing to come up on stage. It'd mean a lot. You can hit the Q&A button, and when you do that, you'll see a raise hand feature, and we can pull you up on stage. We're all working from home. Don't worry about it. Don't be shy. But if anyone's up for it, we would love to hear from you. I'll throw out bribes. Chrissy, I know you mentioned your team came to the last summit. So if you want to come up and share how ad day was, we'll be sure to give you a VIP pass, fully complimentary, which does include recordings of over 50 sessions, can run hundreds of dollars, and includes other benefits as well. But if anybody else is up for it, I can't see if anyone's raising their hand. If not, I'll just commentate. Kimberly really liked the Facebook offline donation conversation. That was very helpful. That's great to hear. We really appreciate Warren doing that. And definitely glad you got value out of it, because it's just so important, right? Like, and to optimize our campaigns, but to even really communicate that to our leadership teams, and to make sure we have buy-in on these channels. The live audit sessions, that's awesome to hear. Oh, great. That's awesome. You heard about us from HubSpot. Really appreciate that. Is anybody up to raise their hand and want to come up on stage? Annie loved hearing how SEO and PPC work together and not separately, and how that was super helpful. I love the brains of Iz and Ashley, and I saw those jokes about the work wife combo, but they're a powerful team, and we're very grateful for them. They're great teachers. All right, going once, going twice. Any other takeaways? Oh, we actually, all right. It sounds like we have somebody ready. Beautiful. Christina, we'll pull you up here on stage in 1 second. All right, we'll pulling Christina up here. All right. Christina,
Hello.
welcome. I mean, you can maybe drop our slides too, Maria, if you want. But yeah, why don't you share like who you are and what organization you're with, and then from there, we'd love to hear how your takeaways of today's event have been.
Sure. My name is Christina Smith. I am the marketing specialist for Mirror Inc. We are an addiction services treatment facility throughout Kansas. We have facilities in Kansas City all the way to Wichita and into Western Kansas as well, providing treatment for those with drug addiction. Honestly, for me, some of the best takeaways was all of the opportunities that we have to really get ads going. The Microsoft grant, the LinkedIn grant on top of the ad grant. For someone who works with a very limited budget, that is super helpful to get started. And then as we continue to grow and build, building onto more paid ads and spending our money wisely.
That's awesome. Well, really appreciate you sharing. That's great to hear. Is there anything else we can do to support you, or I guess like what's lingering for you as far as like what's next after Ad Day?
What's next after Ad Day is the summit. I'm actually already registered and ready to go. I had such an amazing time with my team back in March, so we're really excited to get into those sessions. And I also appreciate that the slides are available past these events. So like my supervisor couldn't make it today, but I can definitely share that information with her, and we can all grow as a team with that information.
I love it. Well, we really appreciate that. Since you're going to the summit, we'll be sure to follow up with you.
Great.
Pretty sure we have your contact information, and then we'll give you free VIP access to the summit.
Awesome.
So get all the
That's awesome.
recordings. That's it's such a big production that it's free registration, but we do have the VIP offering for all the recordings, and it comes with other benefits as well that we're continuing to layer on. So thank you for coming to this
Thank you so
or
much. I
today,
appreciate
and for coming back, and thank you for what you
it.
do and your mission.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you. Maria, we got anyone else in the green room, or should we move on? Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for everyone for sharing your takeaways within chat, and thanks to Christina for jumping on the stage with us as well. We love to hear it. It's why we do this. And so, without further ado, for those, we still got people here, which I just really value. And I just want to share my screen again, but we might have to actually take this slide down. But I just want to bring up the vast majority of the team that educated today. And then from there, we want to hear your Q&A. So what outstanding questions do you have? And let's chat. And Maria, it might make sense to take the slide down. But if we can get questions going in Q&A and chat, then we can facilitate. All right. So if you're still out there, we appreciate it. We value you. But what other questions do you have? What's still bubbling up for you after all of today's content? And from there, we can chat as a team. Don't know if my Q&A feature is backed up, but yeah, feel free to post your questions in the Q&A. And then while we wait for that, I'd love to just throw it here to the team. How were your guys' specific sessions, and what were some of the questions that you fielded, or like what were your takeaways in working with the audience today?
I can go.
Yeah, I can start.
Oh, you
go ahead as well.
No, you go.
I just thought that a few of the questions really made me think about how we even do Facebook and Instagram advertising. I mean, one question in particular asked about accessibility of screen readers and emojis. And so I just thought it was like really awesome to be able to think through what accessibility really means, even in our Facebook and Instagram advertising. So there were some really valuable questions coming through the chat, but that's one that stuck with me.
In our YouTube session today, we talked a lot about remarketing and how impactful that can be really for year end, and why we really should be starting that now, not in September when we're prepping for year end, and how important YouTube year round and building those audiences and building that top of funnel is really important. So we talked a lot about remarketing. We talked a lot about just some first steps to get started on YouTube. What does that look like and the impact that can have? So great questions, and yeah, super excited.
Excellent. Well, if I'm going off of upvotes here, so if you're in the audience, you can see the Q&A. Keep the questions coming, but we're looking forward to having a little bit of a mini roundtable on these topics. So first question comes from Leah. Which channel offers immediate results? Leadership buy-in is tough on a limited budget. I'll pass this to Reagan to kick us off, and then we can go from there.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. Ultimately it's going to depend. Like there's none of these channels you can just dive into, and just because you chose YouTube or just because you chose Facebook, you're going to get results. Like it does matter the ads that you're running, the strategies that you're using, the budget that you're spending. Typically, if we have an organization come to us and it's right before Giving Tuesday and they really need donation ads running, that's their goal, we'll typically push them more towards like Facebook and Instagram advertising, Google Display, YouTube, those paid channels. For immediate results, I wouldn't recommend something like SEO or the Google Ad Grant, just because while they're extremely important for your marketing, efforts that you guys are doing in the long run, it can take 2, 3, 4, or 5 months before you're really seeing meaningful results. So, but there's a downside to that, right? Like going into Facebook and Instagram, display, YouTube, there's risk. And, if you're going in and you spend $1,000 and you didn't know what you were doing, that can also potentially hurt your ability to get leadership buy-in. It doesn't mean that Facebook doesn't work. We've had plenty of people come to us saying Facebook does not work for us, and we get them to do Facebook and it works incredibly well. So yeah, it's kind of a hard question to answer, but the things that you're going to pay for, those channels that allow you to push ads in front of people, will typically work faster if you're using the right strategies.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's how we define results, right? Is that traffic, and we want to launch things like the ad grant and build the top of the funnel. If it's donations, right? Marketing takes persistence, right? There's no really shortcut to channel, but if we have a strong strategy, it's all in execution. So I think next is a great question, and hopefully I'm sure multiple team members here have thoughts, but Ollie asks, what advice do you have for marketers who are just starting out in digital? Anyone want to jump in there?
Besides going to Nonprofit Ad Day or the Nonprofit Marketing Summit, I would say those are pretty good places to start. But a lot of these channels, they want you to succeed. Like Facebook wants you to succeed with Facebook ads. Google wants you to succeed with Google ads because they're going to make money that way. So they do have some pretty incredible resources out there. I know if you're looking to better understand Google Display, YouTube, or paid search, Google has their own portal with free trainings that are incredibly insightful. There's even an exam at the end where you can kind of test your knowledge. That is something that we require, like new hires that are coming into Community Boost as they're learning these channels. We require them to take those, and I think it's a great starting place. What is really important, though, is there is not a ton of trainings out there that are hyper-specific for the nonprofit space. So sometimes you have to listen to these things and the strategies that they're telling you, and then realize, okay, maybe this would work in an e-commerce space. How do I adapt that to us? Which is why the Nonprofit Marketing Summit is great. And then we also have something that we're launching called the Accelerator, which is more nonprofit specific trainings for SEO, Google Ad Grants, Facebook and Instagram, YouTube. It's also a really solid one as well. That would be potentially worth checking out if you have budget for it.
I know everyone else here is, most of us gone from 0 to 100 in our digital learnings, but any other advice? And I know you train a lot of the team as well. That's really learning digital for the first time, but might have studied marketing. Any other tips?
Well, personally, I've learned a lot from Reagan. So he's been a great mentor to me on YouTube and Display. But I think reading a lot of blog posts as well and just being up to date on what these platforms are releasing is also a really important thing. I know Community Boost is really focused on releasing a lot of blogs about all different channels and how they work together. And so I just think starting there, reading that kind of stuff is important too. I personally had a marketing degree from college, but came in with kind of no experience in Community Boost. So learned a lot on the job. And I think that's kind of the best way to do it, is to kind of get in platform, see what works. Obviously you kind of need clients or need somebody to let you experiment there too. But I think those are kind of some ways. Starting off by reading up to dates on what these platforms are releasing is really important, because then you can kind of figure out the trends and where these channels are going, which is really, really important for what you're doing in platform.
Yeah, and to build off of that, staying in tune with what's going on in the industry in general, all of the platforms and Google's algorithm or organic algorithm, things are changing constantly. Even just with iOS 14 launching, there were just so many updates to how we think about our digital marketing strategy and how we approach digital marketing for nonprofits. And so that's definitely something that is worth staying on top of, reading the news, listening to your podcast, like Isabel said, and just trying to stay on top of all of the different updates that are going on.
Excellent. So Annie asks, what are some upcoming trends we can look out for in digital marketing for nonprofits?
I can speak.
No, go.
I can speak specifically for the ad grant and Google Ads. And I kind of mentioned this in my presentation as well. We're definitely in an era where we kind of have one foot in automation and one foot still kind of in the manual optimization of a Google Ads account. So I think it's important to still, like we've been saying, strengthen your skills, keep up to date with what's happening in Google Ads, and sharpen your optimization strategy, but also start to rely on some of that automation, because since Google's pushing it, Google does favor that. So in Google Ads specifically, using responsive search ads, using smart bidding, those things are only going to help your account run more effectively, and it takes a lot of time off of the optimizations.
Yeah, Go ahead.
So now go ahead as well.
Only thing I wanted to add there too is like I think creative is going to be a big push too, and making sure that you're experimenting with adjusting creative and learning from what's performing is going to be really important, because AI can only do that to an extent, but really figuring out how to invest in your creative, whether that's from video aspect or ad copy, I think that's what's going to be able to utilize AI and then push your performance to the next level too.
Yeah, I totally agree with the content really being such an important factor in a lot of different channels. And then in addition to not only having solid content, but making sure that you have a really strong user experience on your website, whether that be site speed, whether that be properly formatted content that you're building out. User experience is really just gaining more and more importance in a lot of different channels, especially SEO, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I think the other big one that's already like completely changed the marketing space, but it's going to continue to make waves, is the updates with tracking. We can't use some of the same strategies we used to and rely so heavily on super high return on ad spend to like be the driver of what is effective in a campaign and what's not. And so thinking about the implications of that, as Facebook and Google, start to lose data, building out those custom audiences gets tougher and tougher for them. So looking at platforms and analyzing, what is the audience we want to hit, and is there a solid way to hit it? If Facebook and Instagram, you have trouble potentially with a certain interest audience targeting something, well, okay, is there something that these people might be searching on Google where I could set up a custom audience there and hit them that way, or vice versa? So, it's going to take more work and it's going to get more difficult, but I think that also creates a huge opportunity for those nonprofits that do choose to invest time and internal resources into figuring it out, because not everybody will be able to keep up with it. And it's our goal to make as many people like have that accessibility as possible, whether they can afford an agency or not. But if you're not taking the time to learn and stay up to date, it is going to get tougher going forward. And TikTok, that's also something. If you're not on TikTok, you should be on TikTok.
Yeah, I think that's all great. I mean, I think a lot of the themes the team mentioned kind of fall into three buckets for me. I mean, TikTok's interesting. We thought about even having a session on TikTok ads, but we left it out for now because it just feels like people need to really learn more of the organic experience, and then from there, it's definitely going to be an ad platform that we'll be talking about soon. It'll probably be covered at the summit, but I think a lot of what the team was discussing was, like privacy, right? There's like three big themes for me this year. Privacy, it's all about first party data, and that's like why these tech platforms are really battling over the pixel, right? So we have to invest in tech it's just mission critical, that allows us to have both a good user experience but to have data. And then there's the diversification, right, where we have to really consistently test channels, whether we just have to find a way, right? Like we have to cover that marketing gap as an organization and test new things and diversify. It's all omni-channel now, which leads me to performance. And we just have to think about these things as, brand building, but also collaboratively moving our bottom line. And then that percent of total revenue will continue to grow from like offline versus online. And it's only going to get bigger. And I think there's a huge opportunity for most of our offline donors to continue to push them into online recurring, which what I would say is probably my high level recommendation and strategy. Okay. I love this question. I think we can pose this to some of the like Chloe and Katie, and I'm curious for you guys to chime in as well. But and then the rest of the team, of course. But Alba asked, what was the most impactful campaign you have worked on?
I don't think I can ever make it through a year end without just crying at our clients' YouTube videos. I can't make it. But Souls for Souls particularly had a beautiful YouTube video that they used for their year end that was they provide shoes to homeless children, and it was all of these kids opening up their new pair of shoes, and I just sobbed. It was just like, oh my gosh, the impact that this program is having, how happy these children are. I was just like, all right, I'm gonna go cry in a corner because it was so gorgeous. I really appreciate getting to work with the clients that are working with children, because that just really pulls at my heartstrings. So it'd probably be Souls for Souls last year.
Chloe? What was your most
I think for
impactful?
me recently, there have been a lot of Ukraine campaigns with just really amazing creative, and so really being able to in some way make a small impact on what's going on over there has been really great. So that's been top of mind recently.
Love to open it up to the collective group, some of the most impactful campaigns that you've been most inspired to support.
I know for me, I mean, I can't remember the exact campaigns, but I know that like as we've been able to move up and work with like Charity Water and Save the Children, like those have been so fun because those are the organizations that got me to be interested in the nonprofit space 15, 20 years ago. And so yeah, it's just been cool to see as these organizations have grown, and like thinking about when I started here 5 years ago and we were like 6 people working around like a dining room table. Being able to have that seat to work with the Charity Water has been super inspiring, and has made me super happy.
Yeah, I think for me, something similar to Chloe would be whenever there's a natural disaster, like a hurricane, tornado, earthquake, that's something where you just see search volumes spike. And obviously, it's for a reason. You don't really want it to be there. But since it happened, you really see people mobilize on the web. And then through Google Ads, you can just see like a huge influx. And that works really well within the ad grant. If there are organizations like we work with All Hands and Hearts, who are really on the ground helping people in those places that are affected by natural disasters. So I think just seeing that really huge increase in traffic in those ways of people just wanting to help in whatever way possible is really impactful for me.
Anyone else? Lauren, anything come to mind for you?
Yeah, I was thinking like Katie, there's so many during year end that it's hard to choose from. I think every single campaign we work on is inspiring, but a recent one was for the 10-Minute Museum. We did a gala campaign for them and their museum in New York that's preserving refugee and immigrant stories, just a really cool organization. And obviously during COVID, museums were hit really hard with the shutdown. So to be able to contribute to their campaigns and to see that their gala performed so well, and it performed even better than it did the years prior, was super cool. So I think being able to see the actual numbers and knowing that that's actually contributing to like actual impact with people and preserving these stories and just fulfilling their mission is pretty awesome. So that one came to mind.
Yeah, I want to second actually Tenement Museum because it was interesting actually at the beginning of COVID in 2020. Tenement was hit extremely hard by some of the financial things that come with having to close down a entirely brick and mortar organization, and they were actually at a point where they were like, we don't know if we're going to be able to like keep our doors open, not just like temporarily closing, but like they were thinking about permanently closing. And we were able to kind of connect with them real quick. We helped them with an email campaigns and Facebook stuff. They're able to generate like $50,000 in less than 24 hours. And it like completely changed their approach to like what they were going to be able to do. And they went like heavily online over the course of COVID. And it was just cool to be a part of that because, I mean, they had been an organization that had worked with us for a few years prior. And it was really sad to hear that they were thinking about permanently closing. And the fact that they're even here today where they can have a gala is incredibly inspiring.
Yeah, it's such a big question. I mean, every campaign is so special, and truly we just live in, it sounds almost corny, but really very grateful that we're able to make a living while doing marketing for amazing causes. I think for me personally, while there's certainly mission moments with a lot of these larger organizations with a ton of brand recognition and really like scale, like impact at scale, I think for me, being when we were like a team of like 1.5 or 2 or 3, There's one organization that I think forever transformed the trajectory of my life and of Community Boost. It's called Wounded Warrior Homes. It was a small organization, definitely not Wounded Warrior Project, supporting veterans who were battling post-traumatic stress and were returning from 9/11. And basically it was this amazing lady named Mia who had 6 veterans literally living on her couch with life-threatening PTS. And they were small. Their total revenue was just over 200,000. The year before they did $17,000 in online donations. And then we launched their ad grant and we scaled online giving to 96,000 from 1,400 online donors, and just found this huge audience who wanted to support their specific mission. And that was really cool because, I met a lot of those veterans, and while I might not have had like the scale of some of other campaigns, it was definitely special and gave me a lot of that motivation to fight through the early years of Community Boost. But enough about us and our campaigns. We'll get back to some of these questions. And so Grace asks, wondering our opinions on getting leadership buy-in for digital ads when most focus is on development. Reagan, maybe I'll start with you and we can go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that anytime I'm trying to get someone to make a decision that like I can't be the decision maker on is I want to like help them understand how this is going to make their life easier. And like without digital marketing, if we're not reaching a lot of new people, like it's a lot more face to face that development team really has to take, and it's a lot more storytelling they have to go through versus talking to someone who's already aware of your brand, already has a general idea of what you do. It's going to make your life a lot easier. So I think, just trying to connect the dots for them is important from a storytelling standpoint. As far as, some other options though, it sounds, if you're having trouble getting development or the leadership to buy in, it sounds like there's probably some overall like budget limitations for your ads as well. And so starting with something where you can eliminate the risk on ad spend, like the Google ad grant, I think, or even the LinkedIn ad stuff, those can be really great starting points. It's important to realize like where they sit in the overall marketing funnel. The ad grant's great, but it's first introducing people to your brand. But if your problem is actually storytelling to the people that are already there, obviously it's not the only thing you should do. But starting with those things can definitely be a good place to like get your foot in the door and show them, hey, we are seeing 3,000 more people a month, and how many more conversations are you having? That would be my advice.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I mean, obviously, development and donations cure a lot of our challenges when it comes to operation and programming. But in today's world, it's again that marketing gap I was speaking to in the opening conversation, where most of the challenges we're dealing with when it comes to nonprofit growth and trying to scale our impact is more of a marketing problem now than just like our development problem. And so, when we have boards, right, like boards have a fiduciary responsibility, which is great. I mean, that's the design of our system, this nonprofit sector that fills this larger gap between, private and public. But realizing that like not prioritizing digital and our leadership team, being involved and realizing its importance is ultimately going to is actually like putting our organization in impact and risk. And in my opinion, and we need, it's just like how people engage now, and it's where things are at. So, I think it's just really understanding like how your leadership makes decisions as well, right? Like, do they just need to hear some like stories and case studies? Do they need a ton of data? Do they need it to actually be their idea? Like, it's just like I could definitely nerd out with you on that, because I think to Reagan's point, once people start to see it work, then they get really excited. So sometimes we just got to find a way to show them a little momentum, kind of like, crawl, walk, run, versus just trying to sprint into this much larger budget. Kim asked, do you recommend processing donations via Facebook? I know it's a more user-friendly experience, but what's the cost of not collecting all the donor info directly through our CRM and donation pages? Who wants this? Chloe?
Yeah, I think I can take this one. Yeah, I can take it. For those who may not be familiar, so it is now a capability on Facebook to be able to run donation ads and have users check out directly on your ad. While this is super great, we do miss out on a lot of the information that comes through it. What I do recommend when it comes to donations and fundraising on Facebook is to actually run a fundraising campaign. That way, we are able to go in and retarget those who have started fundraisers, hit them with donation ads later on. It is a user-friendly experience, but we do see more value generally come out of a straight conversion campaign. So I do think it's worth a test if you do have the budget to test an additional campaign. But if you are choosing between like an on Facebook conversion campaign versus fundraising, I would go with fundraising. Definitely.
Yeah. And it would probably depend too on like what your ultimate goal with that ad is. You know, for general donations, like you're just wanting donations at a random part of the year, like you're probably going to get more value of getting that person's contact information and enrolling them into your system. But like think about all the organizations that did, you know, COVID campaigns or Ukraine campaigns. Like sometimes that might be something that's actually out of the scope of what you guys typically do as an organization. But you're running that Ukraine campaign because you have the ability to help. A lot of the people that are going to donate to something like that are donating to support Ukraine. They're not necessarily donating to become a huge part of your mission. And so at that point, you know, they not even be that much value of getting them in the CRM. And at that point, I would recommend probably the Facebook fundraiser side of things, or like birthday fundraisers. I get that a lot. We highly recommend that organizations are running ads to people who have upcoming birthdays and already follow them. And, you know, those type of things, like, yeah, you know, that person starts the fundraiser and their friends and their families donating to it, and you're not getting all the information, but were those friends and family ever going to be your donors? That's harder to know. And so I'd rather take the $25, $30 they're willing to give us because they want to give it to Reagan, not because they cared about giving it to, you know, Community Boost or what, you know, your organization. That point, yeah, fundraisers can make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think in general, we want to give donors choice. And while sometimes we have limited resources and managing, you know, the Facebook campaigns can feel like another thing and we don't have the data, people want that. And I mean, I've seen organizations do hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in Facebook fundraising. And, you know, so it's powerful, especially with year end. We're giving more choice. Giving Tuesday, I think it's worth it. And let's take the money. Let's see. Last question here from Annie, and then we'll wrap up this nonprofit ad day. How can nonprofits who fall into special ad categories get in touch with Google Ads or the Facebook reps to understand like what can and can't be posted while still maximizing impact? Why don't we start with maybe the Google team and then
Yeah, I can take that. So with Google, they have a lot of content online about their policies. So you can go to google.com/ads policy and just look through a list. It's pretty comprehensive. But if you see that any of your ads are disapproved within platform, they do a pretty good job of integrating the help articles within the platform. You can also go to the top right-hand side of Google Ads and there's a little help button and that will direct you to the Google support team. Again, that's more if you have a specific disapproval or area that you're wanting to learn a little bit more about.
Facebook team?
I agree. It's similar with Facebook, but one thing on Facebook is that it doesn't necessarily have to do with your mission and more about what the ad itself is actually saying. So when you're running in a special ad category on Facebook, it does pretty severely limit targeting. So in general, what I recommend as a first plan of action is to try to make your ads a little bit more general. So just because your organization's mission may be something that can fall into a special ad category, if you are able to write a bit more general ads, it may not get flagged. And it's similar to Google, it is generally like a one-off disapproval. You can go ahead and request a review on it. You can make ads a bit more general. If you do find yourself needing to run in the special ad category, the best way to reach the Facebook support team really is via Messenger within business settings, but they can't generally fix things when it comes to disapprovals. And so it's really just a trial and error in your ad messaging.